Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is the regular council meeting for Tuesday, October 11th at 2:30 p.m. I would like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, and we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and the Squamish nations. Looking for the approval of the agenda, which is the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting. If there isn't any errors, omissions, or questions, I will say that it was adopted unanimously, which it isn't. So I will go to Councillor Day. Councillor Day, you know what? Since you wish to speak, do you want me to get a mover and seconder first? Is this about it?
It is about the agenda. I'd appreciate it if I could speak before a motion is made.
Sure.
I just wish to point out that item 7.1 on our agenda, which is the bylaw 1923-01, is mentioned as having been presented on September 26th. There are considerable changes to that bylaw, including the amount of developer contributions and the amount for the Olympic View VMP at Latoria Road double lane roundabout. And I have concerns that we haven't had an explanation for the public of how the development cost charges have changed and or how we will realize those contributions in the future. A number of the...
Yeah.
Are we discussing whether the minutes are accurate, or are we discussing?
Sorry, can you use your mic, please?
Are we discussing?
Hold on.
Are we discussing whether the minutes are accurate, or are we discussing whether the bylaw should have been approved?
I believe Councillor Day is asking or arguing that possibly that this should be removed. If that's the case, then I would make that recommendation, Councillor Day, and then we can have that discussion. If that's what you're looking for.
If I may finish without further interruption, discussing the agenda, which is what we were on. I am speaking to the bylaw that is on our agenda that was presented to the public on September 26th as agenda item 7.2. And today is before us on this agenda as agenda item 7.1. And it speaks to the 5-year financial plan and the developer contributions for 2022 and the cost to do the Veterans Memorial Parkway at Latoria Road double lane roundabout, which has increased significantly and which we have not had a report for the benefit of the public as to how we would realize those development cost charges, given that significant developments within our community may or may not be contributing to those development cost charges. So I would like to move that we defer this item until a report is presented to the public so that they have an opportunity to comment.
Okay, I'll look for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion. Sir, Councillor Parkinson.
The worthy topics of discussion. I'm sure staff has some input. I'd like to hear that.
Certainly, this bylaw that is before council for consideration, this is the first financial plan amendment for the 2022 to 26 financial plan bylaw. The bylaw that is on tonight's agenda has been amended to reflect previous direction that was received this past spring regarding an increase to the capital budget for the Latoria and Veteran Memorial Parkway roundabout intersection works. The first time this increased budget was disclosed publicly was at the second quarter financial update this past July. And if council wishes that a more fulsome report or memo accompany the update that is reflected in the draft amending bylaw, staff would be pleased to return with that information. As an aside, additional financial information and update will be coming with the third quarter financial results, which are scheduled to be in chamber November 14th.
You good? Councillor Kobayashi.
I'd like to, do we need a motion for that then, for that report then, Your Worship?
I would assume that if this motion passed, that Councillor Day has moved, that would give direction to staff to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Councillor Baxter.
I'm not in any doubt about what we're doing here or how much it's going to cost. And as staff pointed out, it has been brought up in public before. So I think at a minimum, we should move on with the agenda as it is and discuss it before we approve the bylaw.
Thank you. Yeah, so just as a clarification, this would just be if it's on the agenda or not this evening, it doesn't, or this afternoon, it does not mean that that agenda item has passed. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So one of the things that I've learned over the years being here at council is that it doesn't help to make assumptions. Whenever we get it wrong, it is the taxpayer who is on the hook. And all that I'm asking for is not to stop this bylaw from going forward, but for it to come forward with additional information, which I did try to acquire prior to this meeting. I've sent emails, I've met with staff to try to get the answers, but my concerns remain that the development cost charges associated with these changes for the amendments to the 5-year financial plan may be somewhat in doubt in terms of who will be contributing and when those monies would come forward, and any shortfall would be on the citizens of Colwood. And therefore, I'm just asking to have all of the information before I'm asked to make a vote on them.
Okay, can I go to our staff? Can staff please repeat the motion? Because I'm heard two different things.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. It was to defer until a report is presented to the public with the details on this change.
So is that correct? So you are not, are you look, I guess where I'm becoming confused, Councillor Day, is are you looking for this to be on the agenda this afternoon or not? And it sounds the motion suggests that it is not, but I thought I just heard a comment saying that you did still want to discuss it.
I'm happy to discuss the item, but I would like to have a report that is available to both myself and the public to understand how we went from developer contributions of $11,294,700 to developer contributions of $14,596,700.
Okay, so can I just clarify, what I heard in the motion was to defer this. So is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm asking to defer this until the report is publicly available.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parkinson.
I guess that helped. I'm just trying to get clarity here, Councillor Day. Are you suggesting that the works at Latoria and VMP that are funded by DCC funds to some extent, that number is different than what you saw before, and therefore where does the money come from? Or the DCC proportion of that is different than what you understood it to be, or that you think that it's DCCs are pledged to build that intersection that the city may not have in its possession yet?
My concerns are specifically related to the differences between the bylaw that was presented on September 26th and the numbers that are in that bylaw are different from the numbers that are in today's bylaw And I would like to understand how we will realize those numbers, given that a number of our larger long-term developments are exempt from those DCC rates.
Councillor Baxter.
It's been my experience that Councillor Day will continue to doubt the numbers no matter what reports are produced. But despite that, it's still entirely possible to go ahead with what is on the agenda here today. And indeed, rescind third reading and pass the new third reading. And there would still be another meeting required for adoption. And the report that Councillor Day suggests she would like to see could be presented at that meeting before the future council makes the decision on adoption. So I don't see what anybody's gaining by taking it off the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just for some clarification, it is actually going for third as amended and adoption is what's scheduled for tonight, just for some clarification.
Thank you. I'm getting really close to that. This is something that should be talked about in the, not for the item to be on or off. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this, but Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'm only trying to advocate for having the information before the decision is made. We are being asked to make a decision, and I am legitimately concerned that we may not realize the amount of money that's required through development contributions, because a number of our largest developments are grandfathered under the old DCC.
I'm going to go with Councillor Parkinson, then Baxter. And as I said, I really would like to call the vote soon.
Sorry, Your Worship. I just, again, looking for clarity and perhaps staff could help. I think we have had some issues with CACs being grandfathered, but I don't think there's issues with DCCs. Have I understood that incorrectly? Perhaps Mr. Earl could enlighten me, or Ms. Hepting.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Earl.
Through the chair to Councillor Parkinson, not fully understanding Councillor Day's concerns, there are differentiations with CACs with each different zone. There is grandfathering at times with development cost charges. So I'm not sure the degree to which such grandfathering may or may not affect the budgets that are in this document. All of that said, administration does have the authority through council resolution to proceed with the direction that is being potentially embodied in this financial plan housekeeping amendment. And so therefore it is not urgent that this work be done. If council would be more comfortable with this housekeeping amendment coming slower at the next meeting, we are happy to provide that temperament, as we do have full authority to proceed.
Great, thank you. Councillor Baxter, and then I'm going to call the vote.
I'd just like to ask the CIO to explain grandfathering of DCCs. Under what circumstances does that occur?
Not seeing a planner in the room, I'm confident there are times when such might occur. I am not confident there are times when such might occur that would have a material impact on the item in question.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that the only grandfathering is for 1 year after the DCC bylaw is passed. I believe new building permits are not affected for that 1 year. Anyway, I think it's
great. Thank you.
Relevant.
So I have a motion to defer 7.1. So I will call the vote. Those in opposition to deferring 7.1, please raise your hands. Councillor Parkinson, Logan, Jansen, Mayor Martin, and Councillor Baxter. So that motion fails. So that brings us back to looking, I will need a motion to approve the agenda, which is the near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Logan, second by Councillor Baxter. Further discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes to the agenda. Moving on to Mayor's message. So a couple quick things just wanted to share with the general public. The first was last week, council members of council were able to attend an event that was at the Colwood Fire Hall for the Colwood Firefighters Historical Society in regards to engine, what was that, Chief? Old engine 5.1, which was repurposed and for the MD fundraising events, and we were able to see the truck. It was new, has new painting and everything. The city was provided this award for donating the truck. And I also would like to congratulate Councillor Parkinson. It looked like he also received an individual recognition for the donations he's made towards that truck. So thank you very much. There were several business leaders who donated to that, and it was very much appreciated by the community. The second thing I just wanted to share was I attended the reconciliation hockey game with the Grizzlies, and this is the First Nations logo that is now being used by the Victoria Grizzlies. This was donated to us by the team, and what I'm going to do is have it placed into the mayor's office so that everybody has an access to it. And then I would be remiss by not acknowledging that we are at the end. This is our last meeting, and I think what I'd like to say is on behalf of all of council, to you, Mr. Earl, our CAO, I would like to share and say through you, I would like for you to express to all the staff the sincere appreciation that all of us have at this table for the amount of work that staff have done over the past 4 years. We have sincerely appreciated it. We think that we have an outstanding staff, in my opinion, and very, I know we are all highly appreciative of the work that you and your team have done. So thank you for this past 4 years. It has been sincerely appreciated. As for council, I would like to say I appreciated the last 4 years. It has been a real joy for me to sit at this table. I've appreciated the work that all of you have done, and I sincerely believe that the community is better for the past 4 years for the work that this council has done. So thank you. There are 2 councillors who are not running in the next election as well. So I do just want to take a moment and acknowledge Councillor Baxter. Thank you for the investment of your time and energy into your community. And then also Councillor Logan, longest serving councillor that we have had at this table. You will be missed. Not that you won't be missed, Councillor Baxter. I realized when I said that, that came off around. You'll be missed as well. But we thank you so much for all the energy and time that you've invested into this, Councillor Logan. And as I said, the community is much better off over the past 20 years for the amount of work that you've done. And so sincerely, thank you. And you are leaving this table, but you are not leaving the community. And I think the community will continue to recognize you. With that, I would just like to move on to adoption and the receipt of minutes. For this is the adoption of the regular council meeting minutes for September 26th and the report of the public hearing of September 22nd. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Kobayashi. Discussion? Councillor Day.
Sorry, you just skipped over probably nobody here, but public participation.
Oh, that's next. That's 5. I'm on 4. Thank you. I will call the question. Any in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Moving on to public participation. I do not believe we have anybody online. I don't see anybody. And so I will give the public an opportunity to speak if there's anyone wishing this. Yeah, Mr. Mycroft?
Thank you. I was preparing for a 5:30 meeting that I thankfully noticed. I found out was at 2:30. So thanks for your patience. If I'm not totally focused, I just wanted to touch on two items. I came to talk about the cell phone tower. I just wanted to make a statement about the discussion I heard at the outset around the DCCs. As a developer member of this community, I have overseen the creation of 500 single family lots and maybe a couple hundred townhouses over the past 6 years or so. And I have had the opportunity to work, because I work for more of a corporate developer. We have budgets and we've done just fine over the last 5 years. It's my personal opinion, not my employer's opinion, that the city of Colwood should pass the DCC bylaws as fast as you possibly can, because you've missed all of those individual opportunities to collect thousands of dollars from us every time. So I know that you've been working on that. We have, as a comment on the DCCs, there is some grandfathering, but it's very minimal from my experience, from my exposure to this issue. And for example, over the last year, there has been a development cost charge bylaw amendment done to your roads DCC, and your charges went from something like $3,900 per door. And this council has adopted a bylaw that now charges us about close to 7,000, I think 6,800 or so. So, and you caught us on the last subdivision, so congratulations. You know, you got an extra like $250,000 in the bank on that. And I would say you don't have to have it be perfect. You can change the bylaw next council term. So get the
30-second warning.
and then you can change it if you don't like it. So that's my one comment. And then just the second one was more of a, I guess, a comment or question for later if it comes up in discussion. We've been working with staff for some time. I'm going to run out of time. I would just like to make sure that Royal Bay needs a cell phone tower. I hope this policy does it. It's kind of long and I'm not totally sure. But really what I'm expecting and hoping is that as soon as this policy is adopted, that I'm able to come forward, or TELUS will come forward as a proponent later this year to start the process of putting in a cell tower at Royal Bay so that it is up and running next year. I'm worried that if we get into like development permits and more stages of
That's
more
2
approvals, you're going to be asking me why the cell phone tower is not ready at the next election. And you're going to be hearing about it at the door. So thank you.
Thank you. Just looking, anyone else in the public wishing to speak? Your one chance, Doug. No, okay. Then we're going to move on. This is new business. 6.1, Mr. Borhill, our Director of Community Planning, regarding the communications and tennis policy. We have, I'm hoping all the council has read the report. And so just sort of hopefully a brief synopsis and then perhaps answer Mr. Mycroft's question.
Thank you, Worship. As council may recall, after receiving requests from the public to help improve mobile service in South Colwood, council directed staff to draft a new policy that would better align the city's communication antenna policy with federal policy. This resulted in the first draft of the new antenna siting policy being presented to you in June of this year, and council subsequently endorsed it for the purposes of seeking public input and stakeholder feedback. The city solicited input from the community via our Let's Talk Colwood online platform and through direct communication with stakeholders. This resulted in several comments from the public supporting changes that would lead to improved cell service in the Royal Bay neighborhood, and comments from Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, the federal regulator of antenna systems. The second draft antenna system siting policy therefore includes some relatively minor changes based on ISED's input as outlined in the staff report and the redlined copy of the draft policy before you today. The proposed changes include improved definitions for telecommunication antenna and tower. Secondly, changes to the height section of the development guidelines to remove specific reference of support for a higher tower at the Royal Bay development, and replacement with reference to developing areas of the community as long as they are substantially compliant with other design guidelines. This is to add clarity and to avoid the prospect of the policy becoming anachronistic in the event of a new high tower being installed at that location at Royal Bay. Thirdly, clarification of the yards, parking, and screening section of the development guidelines by adding that the city will review on a case-by-case basis situations where specific characteristics of the proposed site of a new antenna system prevent it from complying with setback requirements. Fourthly, the addition of references to other maritime marking requirements in the signage and lighting section to complement antenna lighting exceptions for navigation equipment. And lastly, clarifying language to confirm that letters of concurrence and non-concurrence would be provided along with development permit approval or denial to state the city's position on antenna proposals where applicable. Staff have confirmed that the revised policy is in good alignment with the federal policy and recommend that council consider rescinding the communications antenna policy and associated policies and adopt the new antenna system siting policy in its place. That concludes my introduction. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Councillor Jansen, then Kobayashi, then Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. A few small things here. First off, I've heard loud and clear from residents down in Royal Bay, their inability to connect to cell service. The courts view cell service as a basic human right. It used to be that they would inhibit someone who's committed an offense from possessing a cell phone. That doesn't happen anymore because it has been ruled at the highest level in our province and probably across the country that this is a human right. People down there are unable to connect to regular cell service. It's spotty at best, if not just outright terrible. This is a safety issue. It's a safety issue for people down there and people who choose not to have a home phone, but they use a mobile service. Basically down there, people are forced to get a hard line often because of the inability to connect with cell service, let alone people working from home. I do have a few questions. Is this policy it? Is that it? There's no more barriers. There's no more decisions to be made. There's nothing on the fees or anything else. Once we adopt this today, if that's what happens, next week we're making calls to TELUS and the tower is going up as quickly as possible.
Through the chair, this policy is complementing changes to the land use bylaw that also liberalizes our regulations around towers. So it's important to recognize both of those pieces that are scheduled to be considered for adoption tonight or this afternoon. The other pieces that are currently at play are administrative policies that would cover off things like the application process and the submissions that would need to be made. Staff have drafts of those now and will be ready upon adoption of this policy to implement them. The one piece of the puzzle that isn't in place is a specific fee in our miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw, but that is forthcoming later this year, early next. The fact that we don't have a specific fee to charge for this wouldn't hold us back from considering an application if it was forthcoming as soon as the policy was adopted.
I think our constituents would be disappointed if the ability to put up a tower was in any way inhibited by some kind of administrative process that we haven't taken into account as of today, right here, right now. Because it has been impressed upon me what a priority this is for those residents down there. So that's good to hear. Does this policy in any way, I know Royal Bay was the one that got this ball rolling. I haven't seen anything in here, but is there anything in here that inhibits Colwood Creek coming forward and requesting a tower to be put up, or, you know, a company that felt they needed a service somewhere else? Does this free up the ability for them to put up a tower anywhere in the community where it's felt that it's necessary?
Through the chair, the policy amendments were designed to primarily address the fact that there were disconnects between the city's policy and federal policy that we heard from the telecommunication companies was preventing them from making applications. There was also provisions within our land use bylaw that put restrictions in place that persuaded telecommunication companies to put them elsewhere. So we've done outreach with those stakeholders. We understand the changes that we're making would align very well with the federal process so that Colwood wouldn't be an outlier relative to other communities. And we do not see what we're putting forward to be creating any additional impediments. That being said, the process is mandated by the federal government. It's managed such that municipalities like Colwood have a say. And this policy is advocating a process where for specifically towers over 15 meters, we would be bringing forward the application to council, and council would have the option to provide its concurrence or non-concurrence on various applications.
So again, just a couple of more small things. Yards, parking, setbacks, case by case, the city will review it. It's pretty general. Is there a specific desk in the city? Does that come to council? Is that the variance committee? Who is it? And again, I would hate to see this bogged down in some process, some murky process that isn't specific as far as when TELUS or whomever goes to put a tower up somewhere.
Thank you for that question through the chair. That specific change emanated from input from the federal government stating that we didn't have the jurisdiction to apply setbacks. So the previous wording stated that antenna systems had to comply with their land use bylaws setbacks. So the wording that was included was meant to soften that language and give council, that would be the deciding body in this case, the ability to consider setbacks.
So it doesn't specify that, it says the city, and I think perhaps some specificity that comes to the council table for sign off, if that's the intent, so that we don't get bogged down in the future. Mandatory co-location. So if TELUS or an individual company, or say Bob's cell phone company, wants to put up a tower, is this in any way inhibit them from putting up their own tower? As in, my point being is we're going to say no to them until they come back with 4 different telephone companies that all want to share the same pole. Like my opinion would be that if TELUS wants to put one up, boom, they get the right to put one up if they're the first to the table. And then if subsequent companies come along, that they then are forced or allowed to join an existing pole. Is that my understanding of the intent, or is that, am I missing something, or is there anything there that might inhibit a pole going up?
Once again, thank you for that question through the chair. Not to my knowledge, really what we're doing is outlining our expectations for the owners of antenna systems to efficiently use towers to limit the overall number of towers in the community. So I don't see that as being a policy item that would restrict their development.
Sounds great. Now, one thing that I don't see in here anywhere, and I'm going to throw this out there, and this might be completely out of left field. We've talked extensively about the rabbit issues down there, and even the possibility for Raptor Platforms. Is there an opportunity here to, or has it even been contemplated, or is it a no for specific reasons, whether we could double end this? If this is a 100-foot, 30-meter tower going up, why not let the hawks and ospreys and eagles and what have you get a good view of the unwanted rabbit population? I guess that's more of a comment. I'm sure you're not ready for that, but that would be awesome if we could double end that and advertise that.
We'll look into it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much. Good questions, Dean. Just one question I have. Is this going to get us into trouble later on? The interpretation under height. You actually used the word yourself tonight or this afternoon, and that is substantially compliant. I wasn't like, there's no definition in your policy. So what does that mean? What's substantially compliant mean?
Thank you for that question. and through his worship, substantial compliant basically is meant to infer that the city's expectation is that proposals would meet the majority of the design guidelines outlined within it. Substantially compliant in a really on the ground sense, when we're looking at design guidelines, we're looking at the intent of the design guidelines being met, number one. And number two, that when there's changes being made or there's an effort to better reflect the design guidelines, those intents are, that intent is reinforced and the outcomes clearly align with the intent. So in this case, it was simply wording to suggest that our expectation is that the design guidelines will otherwise be followed beyond that exception for height.
Thanks so much.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship. In my review, I did get into the existing policy and I was reading my way through that. And, you know, my eyes started to water and my head hurt. And I'm sure we can all find tiny little bits here that maybe we could quibble about or adjustment. I'm satisfied that the industry has had a chance to look at this, that this is better than what we have now. I think I agree with my colleagues that the cell phone service in Royal Bay is just not acceptable in today's day and age. And this has got to be a step in the right direction. So I'd be very happy to move the motion, Your Worship.
Thank you. And so just to confirm, Councillor Parkinson, you're moving that we rescind policy number COM 001, communications antenna policy COM-F 001, communication antenna review application, and COM-F 002, communication antenna review information forms, and adopt a policy antenna 001 antenna systems sitting policy.
Correct.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Baxter. Any further? Nothing further. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Is there any differentiation in this policy between the type of antenna that a radio station would use and the type of antenna that a cell phone would use?
Thank you for that question through the chair. Yes, there are, I should clarify that the types of antenna systems that this is intended to cover include both the commercial systems that telecommunication providers as well as broadcasters would use. So the large towers upwards of 15 meters up to, you know, they get quite high, 45 meters and plus. There is an exception, an exemption for amateur radio supporting structures. So that is the one type of antenna that's stated to be exempt from this policy.
Okay, so far the discussion around this table has been largely focused on the need for cell phone coverage in Royal Bay. There are bigger issues this may create unintended consequences that might encourage, say, a radio station to put in a large, high-powered antenna, which could cause significant nuisance to the community. And is there anything to mitigate that concern?
Through the chair. So all of the policy that's within this is meant to work within ISCD's policy process for adjudicating applications for these types of infrastructure. So really the intent is to give the telecommunication providers and broadcasters our expectations as to what the city's looking for to protect the community's interests, as you've raised. And this policy would be the basis for council's statement of non-concurrence or concurrence with the proposal that would then go to the federal regulator.
So if we had, say, a large tower proposed by a communication company that could cause significant distress to the community, council would have an opportunity to reject that?
Through the chair, council would have an opportunity to provide a statement of non-concurrence to the federal government. But ultimately, it's their decision as to whether a proposal is accepted or not.
Thank you. So the last time that the community had significant issues with the telecommunications company, the federal government did not care about our citizens and the rates of childhood cancers, the rates of people's electronics malfunctioning on Triangle Mountain. So we have done the opposite of helping them, and we are opening the floodgates. I know that people want and need cell phone coverage. I just wish we could do a better job of providing it. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands, so I will call the question. Those in opposition to the motion. Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 6.2, this is Mr. Brohill, our Director of Community Planning, regarding the endorsement of Q4 2022 grant applications and updates.
Thank you, Worship. The report before you on this item provides an update on the in-progress grant applications made so far in 2022. These amounting to approximately 13.2 million in potential funding, and also seeks your endorsement for 4 more grant opportunities identified this quarter, totaling 1.2 million in grant funds. Staff are also recommended the inclusion of $328,150 in the draft 2023 to 2027 financial plan for matching funds to support the following 4 projects. First is the implementation of various aspects of the Cold Creek Management Plan outlined in Table 2 of the staff report, totaling 1.2 million, with 1 million proposed to be sought from the Federal Natural Infrastructure Fund and a matching amount of 200,000. So I just want to clarify, the report can easily be read to suggest that it's 20% of the total project cost, but we're required to provide 200,000 matching funds to the $1 million grant. These improvements include new park amenities like a picnic shelter and park furnishings, as well as extensive tree planting and restoration of riparian habitat along Colwood Creek. Second is the implementation of 12 active transportation counters throughout the community, as called for by the city's draft active transportation network plan. This project to install 10 post type pedestrian and cyclist counters and 2 pedestal type counters that display count data and other information like the temperature. Total cost is estimated to be 270,000, with 162,000 proposed to be covered by a grant application to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Program, and the remaining 108,000, or 40% of the total, to be funded by the city. Active transportation counters would provide important data to track our modal shift performance and make infrastructure decisions. User counts are often required for other grant applications, and the counters would provide the backbone infrastructure to provide this. Lastly, both the UBCM Asset Management Planning and BC Infrastructure Planning grant programs have been targeted to fund 50% of the cost of a $40,300 project, procure asset management software, and combine sustainable infrastructure replacement plan data with other asset management data, such as updated condition assessment reports. This would allow the new system to produce financial forecasts and modeling of important for the ongoing development of the city's asset management program. That concludes my introduction. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just a quick question, Ian. Is when you put down what our costs are, is that the all up costs, including potential operating, maintenance, and infrastructure replacement costs? Is that all included when you say our costs?
Thank you for that question through the chair. No, the costs outlined in the staff report are simply the capital costs. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Worship, and mostly for my own clarity. I think we've come to understand here that when stuff goes in the financial plan, that's sort of authorization to do the work. So we have here, do we have a separate column where the, for instance, Colwood Creek Park $1 million? I guess if we again approve applying for the grant, we're putting some money into the financial plan for that over the next couple of years to pay our share. If we don't get the grant, we may well decide that's not where we want to spend that money. How, you know, how does that come back to council? Is there sort of an asterisk beside that funding that's there if the grant comes, but not if it doesn't?
Through the chair to Councillor Parkinson, the current 2022 to 26 financial plan does include, and I believe it was just shy of a $1.4 million budget to support capital infrastructure initiatives coming out of the first 3 individual parks management plans. So to directly answer your question, there currently is authority to spend in those areas independent of whether or not we are successful with this grant. That said, with the grant application and with the upcoming service review and into the 2023 budget deliberations, I would suggest that that is council's opportunity to reprioritize any existing capital works that have already previously been budgeted and to provide further direction or reprioritization of those works.
So would that be the same for the other items in there, the active transportation counters? And I mean, they're all good projects. And if, you know, somebody wants to pay for the majority of them, I'm all on board. If they don't, I'm not so sure those are the decisions I would make. So do we get a chance to second kick at the can when we find out whether or not we've got the grants?
Yes, and we did specify, so with these grant applications, some of these initiatives staff have previously received direction on these initiatives, and there are budgets established within the existing financial plan. I highlight that, you know, you are correct. When a project is identified and funded through the financial plan, that is direction to staff. And with it being a 5-year financial plan, when we flip into that second year, we look to that plan, despite the fact that budget deliberations may be underway, we will start on those initiatives. That said, if there are initiatives that aren't currently in the financial plan, that is an opportunity to provide direction or to alter the prioritization. In this instance, all of these works, none of them have been started. So these would all be new. And so I would suggest that certainly this fall, as we head into service review, there is an opportunity to comment on the prioritization of all of these works that have been outlined in this report.
Thank you.
Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Worship. And a quick question. The Federal Affordable Housing Innovation Fund, did we see an opportunity there at all or identify a potential opportunity within our community that we could leverage an application in that regard? And I don't know enough about it to have an opinion. It did come up at UBCM that it's out there and they're actually looking to give the money away and having some difficulty.
Through the chair, thank you for highlighting that. I'll follow up with the team and check in on that opportunity.
And I don't know much about it other than they flashed up on the screen, so don't take that as gospel. Okay. Oh, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation with one additional clause that if any of these grants are not realized, that the item be brought back to council for reconsideration.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder to that motion? A second by Councillor Baxter. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brohill. Ms. Lalonde, our Manager of Corporate Services, in regards to council orientation and training sessions.
Thank you, Your Worship. This briefing is just to provide council candidates in the upcoming election with an overview of upcoming orientation and training sessions that are planned for the new council term. So this information did go out in every nomination package, so all candidates were aware of it. But since that time, there's been more of a breakdown that includes the information of the topics, the presenter, and topic timelines for each item. Also included in this information is a brief overview of some of the other important dates that are coming up, including service review, budget, and strategic plan sessions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Thank you, Worship. Just, I guess it might not be an issue for me in a few weeks, but for those who have jobs, can we please not schedule something in the middle of the day? I'm anticipating that more than one person on council will likely be employed other than at council. And so looking a full day that isn't like a Saturday or Sunday poses some scheduling issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't need a motion, so we'll just move on to bylaws. Bylaw number 7.1. The first thing that I need is a recommendation that third reading of bylaw number 1923-01, cited as 5-year financial plan 2022 to 2026, amendment bylaw number 1923-01, schedule A and B, be rescinded. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Baxter, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So just going back to what we talked about, is it possible somehow to get a reconciliation of, so that we clearly understand, you know, what's happening with the DCCs there? Yes, I mean, we can all go back and start digging around and rooting around here, but it'd be great just to get a summary of that again, you know, for the next council, I think anyways, that would certainly be beneficial. Just a comment. Thank you.
Certainly through the chair, just to ensure that I follow. Am I correct? Council is looking for both a reconciliation on the changes that are proposed in the financial plan amendment. In addition, council is also looking for an understanding on the city's current status of the DCC reserve funds, as well as the projects that are proposed to be funded by those reserves. Noted.
Great, thank you. Okay, then I will call the question. Those in opposition to being rescinded? Great, motion passes unanimously. We do need to do actually third reading and then final. We can't group them together. So there is a recommendation that bylaw number 1923-01, cited as 5-year financial plan 2022 to 2026, amendment bylaw number 1923-01, schedule A and B, be given third reading as amended to reflect council's direction of May 10th, 2022 to increase the capital budget for the Latoria VMP roundabout works. I get a move by Councillor Jansen, second by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I wonder if the Director of Finance could give us the present balance of the DCC fund.
Certainly through the chair, this is off top of mind. It is somewhere around the $8 million mark. I can return with greater certainty at the third quarter financial update.
So I'd just like to point out that developer contributions listed in the amended bylaw are $14,596,700. And we have just had it confirmed that what we have in hand is about 8. Thank you.
To elaborate on that, the developer contributions budget line item within the financial plan does not just represent DCC spend. It also represents additional cash contributions from developers. But it is absolutely a point worth mentioning in terms of this project in particular. And as I mentioned at the onset of tonight's meeting, the revised budget for these intersection works, which currently sits just under $7.7 million, was first publicly introduced in July of this year. The engineering team was in chambers last week providing an update on the works. with that revised budget, the city does not have sufficient road DCC cash in the city's DCC reserve today for those works. These works will carry into next year. We will be realizing additional DCC contributions that will provide some spend. And as we see this spend actualize, there may be the need to internally borrow from additional DCC reserves. Council will next receive a fulsome update on this at the third quarter update, and then well into budget deliberations as spend continues on these works. There was comments earlier with respect to the grandfathering of DCC rates. Based on everything that I know today, that is far less a factor, so much as this council has granted DCC credits to some other projects within the city. And so those credits will affect the cash that we collect in the near years. So again, additional factor that needs to be considered. But in terms of DCC rates that have been grandfathered, that is certainly not as much of a factor, but credits have been granted to other projects in the area, which do affect the cash that we have on hand.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, both Councillor Day and Jen for the clarity. So I think what I heard was that we have proceeded with the roundabout at Veterans and Latoria. We're short within the DCC pot to pay our share. Can you give me an idea of just how short we are? We have an obligation, and I understand we have other ways to collect the money, but just roads, DCCs versus obligation. Can you give me an idea how short we are? And I suspect you told me that when this came up last time, and it's lost from mind, so I do apologize.
Through the chair, I would prefer to return with specifics at the third quarter financial update. This intention is not to be a financial update, but in terms of the realm, we are between $1 million and $1.5 million off of current estimates. Again, financial plan, these are budget estimates. How both the spend and the revenue actualizes is still pending, but based on the estimates that we have today and the road DCC balance that we have today, it is short between 1 and 1.5 million. There are also a number of other projects underway utilizing DCC reserves, and again, how those actualize will affect additional funds that may be available. This conversation lends itself to additional factors and direction that staff have previously received from this council. We returned with revised road DCC rates, as you're well aware, Bylaw 1836 last year. When we see cost escalations such as this that we are seeing for these works in particular, it lends itself to the fact that these DCC rates that we charge are based on cost estimates. When those estimates fluctuate, increase as they have, consideration should be made to increasing the DCCs that we collect so that we can ensure we do have the DCC revenue to fund the projects that have previously been approved within this DCC program. Staff have received that direction to return with proposed DCC rates, and we are working on that as well.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Councillor Kobayashi.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just so a clarification in my own head. So we're knowingly doing this approval when we know we have a shortfall of between 1 million and $1.5 million, correct?
Correct.
And so can we encumber future councils with this, or how does that work now? I'm not too sure. If you can clarify that to me.
The direction that we had from council when you last considered the quandary was to use short-term borrowing, either internally from ourselves or externally to bridge the short-term gap.
I remember that.
And it will be a short-term gap.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So this is just for third reading. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. And now I need a motion for adoption. I moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Parkinson. Discussion? Seeing that, Councillor Day.
Thank you. I just want to make the point that it's not my intention to be roasting anyone about this issue. I just feel that both members of council and members of the public are unaware of the difficulties that we are going to face in the next few years. Our inflation rates are up. Our development rates are going to go down by the admission of developers in our community. They are slowing down in order to be able to achieve the things that they were more easily achieving in the last few years. And therefore, I feel that it would have been better to bring this forward with more information and with more public awareness of the issues and challenges that Colwood has. Thank you.
Not seeing any other hands, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Moving on to 7.2, this is sewer LAS enlargement. This is for adoption. This is bylaw number 1952, bylaw number 1953, and bylaw number 1954. Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Logan. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.3, this is bylaw number 1955, land use amendment for CD 36-2403 Souk Road and 681 Allendale Road. This is for adoption. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Kobayashi, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in opposition? Nobody opposes. Moving on to 7.4, bylaw number 1956, land use amendment. This is 2022 omnibus amendment. This is for adoption. May I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Jansen, seconded by Councillor Baxter. Discussion? Councillor Day. Sorry.
There we go. Thank you. Unfortunately, I will not be able to support this, as I did make comments at the time that there are a number of areas where these omnibus amendments are not clear to the public as to what's being achieved, and therefore I will be opposing.
Thank you. I will call the question. Those in opposition? Councillor Day opposes. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Logan, thank you. Any in opposition? That is it. Thank you, everybody. 2018 to 2020.